Hello, and welcome to Health Under the Hood, the podcast for people to feel empowered on their health journey, no matter the odds. I'm Dr. Markyia Nichols. I'm your host, and today I have a special guest, Emma Tekstra. She's a global health consultant, independent researcher, and fellow of the Institute of Actuaries, which means she brings hard data and real world analysis to what actually creates health and longevity. Emma has spent 25 years advising global companies on benefits and health strategy, and she brings personal experience to her work. When her son developed neurological and digestive issues that conventional medicine could only manage with prescriptions and a bleak prognosis, she was inspired to dig deeper and investigate why the healthcare system fails so many people and what really drives lifelong health. Her research led her to one undeniable conclusion. The biggest predictors of our health aren't genetics or luck. They're food, lifestyle, and environment. And unlike the multi-trillion dollar healthcare industry, those are things that we can change. Today, Emma helps individuals and organizations understand their options from food as medicine to functional and root cause care, empowering people to reverse disease rather than manage it forever. She's also the author of How to Be a Healthy Human, What Your Doctor Doesn't Know About Health and Longevity. Born in the UK, trained in math and computer science, wow, and grounded in evidence, Emma is here to challenge the status quo and remind us that better health isn't a mystery, it's a choice once you know where to look. I love this. Welcome to the show. I'm really looking forward to this conversation, talking a little bit about your journey and your book. So I'm so glad to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me. Looking forward to
So
it.
let's get right into it because your personal story is really powerful, specifically concerning your son and as he was, going through neurological and digestive issues, and it really changed the course of your work. So take us back, talk about that experience and what it taught you and kind of how it's gotten you to where you are today.
Yeah. Well, I've always loved medicine. I actually wanted to be a brain surgeon as a teenager, but
Oh, wow. Yeah.
so my very conservative dad taught me out of it and encouraged me to be an actuary instead and have an office job. So for 15 years, I'm in the corporate world. I'm doing my thing, and then I have my first child. And I totally relied on everything the pediatrician told me to do. My first kid, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And I was a busy executive, so I didn't really have time to do any research. But he started having problems from a really young age. He was actually put on his first medication for gastrointestinal reflux when he was just 6 months old. And that was just horrible. I mean, I had horrible side effects, and it just kind of got from bad to worse. He had repeated ear infections, tons of antibiotics, and then his behavioral issues started happening when he was, I don't know, two to three, were getting really, really bad. And then finally, at age 5, he was diagnosed with Asperger's and ADHD. And that's when I sort of woke up and I started to research, and I never really stopped. And so what I basically learned was that conventional medicine is first and foremost an industry, right? So focused on making profits and stuck in very old ways of thinking about the body and how it works. So that's how I got here.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's, as I was reading your story, and I have some questions about that too. Um, it's when I look at the healthcare field, I almost retired from medicine myself, quite
Yeah,
early into my journey because of that feeling of like inadequacy and like, what are we doing? Pushing, just pushing pills and not like actually creating, health in people. And the funny part is in medical school, we actually learn the physical processes that do
yeah,
lead to healing. But once you get out into practice, when you're inundated with, a full patient load and you literally have, 10 to 15 minutes to, we were always taught, make a diagnosis, make
yeah,
sure nobody's going to die, and then put a pill on it. So it's created this, this kind of toxic cycle where medicine, when it came to the forefront for after the war to
yeah,
help with, acute things, we've
yeah,
now put it onto this, something it really can't do, which is the prevention and the long-term care.
yeah,
But getting back to you and your story, um, in the book, you came across someone who actually had some similar experiences. So they were able to, it was a friend, I think, that you spoke to, or a
Oh
woman in a
yeah, yeah,
cafe
yeah, yeah,
who was able to help you navigate a little
yeah,
bit about what
yeah.
was happening with your son. And I'm curious, like, I mean, what do you say to someone who doesn't, have like or has no direction or they like don't even know where to start, and
Yeah.
they have, a similar circumstance,
Yeah. I think do your research, yeah, and don't be using Dr. Google. There's
which
reasons
is
why
so
Google
popular.
is not the best place to start. On my website, I have like a section of like informational, places you could go to get really good information.
Oh,
So I'd
that's
always
wonderful.
say, do your own research. Doctors are they're just other human beings, right? They went to a certain medical school. Sounds like in your medical school you learned about the different systems, but how the body all works together, I think, is sort of downplayed. And I think so much of the curriculum is focused on the drugs and the procedures, and there's so much nowadays that is really profit driven, all the new procedures and all the latest drug, and that's going to address this or that fills up the curriculum, right? And so there isn't that much room left for things like nutrition and movement and how important these are. So when you rely on just the doctor in front of you in the white coat, don't assume that they've got all the answers. You're living in your body yourself 24/7, or your child, best because you're there the whole time. So I would just say, do your research. I've tried to, that's really what I've done for my book. I'm not really giving a prescription for, and I use that very loosely. I'm not sort of laying out all the steps you need to go through to help your particular health. What I've done is given a whole umbrella as to how the body works in very much layman's terms, and then some pointers for different things. So different chronic illnesses, and then different modes that you could follow. So different modalities of care that you could get, just to kind of give you an overarching sense. And then at the end, I sort of give some pointers where you might want to start depending on what your particular issue is. So I would just say, don't settle for just what the professional in the white coat is telling you. So do some research and get a second opinion, and maybe find somebody with a different toolbox. So the pharmaceuticals and surgery is just one toolbox, right? So there's people with different kinds of toolbox like you, and like the other professionals at Ciba Health that I really love. So yeah, do your research. That would be my number one.
I love that. And I mean, my favorite motto is if you weren't born with it, then it has the potential to reverse. And honestly,
Yeah,
even if you were born with some
yeah,
things, they
yeah,
still have the potential to
absolutely,
improve. And I
absolutely.
think you're right, because you can't from an empowerment standpoint, even as a person going into their, physician's office, it's almost common sense to think, like, why would someone who really doesn't know you and spends 10 minutes with you, like, know everything that's going on with your body, like 24/7? So I think that empowerment piece is like really key. I mean, maybe we'll get into it a little bit later. I mean, I like even with me, like really focusing on helping people to just listen to their bodies,
Yeah,
and start there. But it sounds like, I mean, I love that you have created sort of a toolkit as well with your book with resources. So somebody who doesn't even know where to start
yeah,
or might not even know like what to research, because let's be honest, they are going to Dr. Google for that first hit of information.
yeah.
So you really have to I think that's wonderful that you've created that. I recommend everybody get your book. I think it's like it's required reading, for someone who's trying to navigate the health system. But in your book too, you say, that the system is rigged against people who want to actually get healthy. So, what are the top, one or two ways that the system keeps us sick, even when the intentions are good?
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest way is the reliance on pharmaceuticals as the first stage intervention, right? I mean, pharmaceuticals should really be a last resort in an emergency situation, and temporary at that, just to get over whatever the emergency is. I think the second way might be how quick doctors are to recommend surgery too, but number one is definitely the pharmaceuticals. And when I challenge doctors about this, they say, "Oh, well, people aren't interested in addressing their lifestyle issues and eating better or moving more or looking at the toxins in their life. They just want to pop a pill." And just in my experience, it's just not the case. Certainly for, I don't know what the numbers on there. I would say 80% of people. Maybe there's a few that could have all the information and still just want to pop a pill. But I think most people have no idea how well their body can heal on its own if you just give it the right support. Or how powerful non-pharmaceutical remedies are. And I'm not saying, you can add a salad every day and it's going to cure your heart disease or your diabetes. There's obviously more to it than that, but there's plenty of clinical trials and scientific evidence on the efficacy of natural remedies. Chronic disease is really a combination of two things: nutrient deficiencies. We've not got what we need to run our body and all of our different systems, and toxic overload. And addressing those two issues are really what's going to make you well, and not adding more chemicals into the mix.
I love that. And one of the things I like to tell people too, when we're looking at root cause, and I agree with you, I think when people are educated about how easily, I, I'll put it, how simple potentially the body can heal when you give it the right building blocks, and you
Yeah.
literally, most of it is taking away what's wrecking the system, then there is more interest. And I
Yeah.
think, unfortunately, a lot of people have been told this is, probably one of the biggest things initially I heard when I went into this root cause medicine was, oh, I was just told I have to manage this for life. Oh, there's no cure for this,
Right.
or, I have to take this medication. And like you said, they're taking that as gospel. So when people, are internalizing those messages, sometimes it can be difficult to reverse that. But it's one of the reasons, I do what I do, because I went from a system where nobody was getting well, when I was pushing pills in traditional practice, to medical, anything I could think of reversing within a couple months.
Absolutely. Love that.
So, yeah, and you brought up a good point about the system in general too. And I think like, from your vantage point, what's the biggest misunderstanding people have about what healthcare is like actually designed to do? And you've worked in the system, you worked outside of it. Like, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think it's designed to make profits for the people that are in it. I think people, they see it as very altruistic. Well, I'm sick and somebody's going to take care of me. But at the end of the day, it's an industry. And so you've got to think about that. There's companies that are selling something, whatever that happens to be. And I'm not necessarily talking about individual doctors, right? There's obviously lots of wonderful healthcare providers out there who are absolutely genuinely focused on making you well, but they're stuck in this system, right?
Yep.
And so it's a
Yep.
system that first brainwashed them in medical school, to think about, the body as separate systems, and let's focus on what's
Yep.
going on in all of these separate systems, and that there's a pill for every ailment, like you said.
Yep. Yep.
And then a downplay nutrition, that, oh, that so many people will go to see their doctors, especially an oncologist or cancer. It drives me crazy. And they go, well, shall I stop eating that, or shall I do this? Or they say, oh, you're not feeling well, just eat whatever makes you feel good. It's so terrible. And so I think people really misunderstand that, and how little training doctors have in things like nutrition and supplements and vitamins and nutrients, and how powerful these are, and what's the difference between the ones you pick up at Costco or high quality ones. I think that's what people just don't realize, and they don't see the profit center at the middle that's above the doctor that they're talking to, the
Yeah. And I
system of
almost wonder if people actually do, but it's hard to wrap your head around, like, a system that's supposed to help you, that's literally really is designed for profits. I always say follow the money when it comes
yeah,
to,
definitely.
pharmaceuticals, because if you're well, then you can't make money on that drug. And I will reiterate, I'll go back again and say, in medical school, this is medical training. I don't remember getting anything on nutrition. However, when you go through these, through systems biology, basically,
Yeah.
for example, you learn about the thyroid cascade, and you learn each step in that cascade and the cofactors that are required for each step. And these cofactors are nutrients. It's like,
That's right.
it's selenium, it's
Yeah.
zinc.
Yeah.
but it's never pulled together like,
Right.
okay, so how do we give that
Right.
person that?
Right. Exactly.
And I tell you, it's true. I mean, I don't know how many times I've gotten the side eye from colleagues in the past, when recommending supplements, of course,
Yeah.
medical grade supplements,
Yeah.
micronutrients. And the science, this is the one thing, and I love science. I love research and I love evidence, and it's there
Yeah.
if you know where to look. So this is
Totally.
one of the big things that it's a pet peeve of mine with other, traditional docs who's like, oh, there's no science behind
Yeah.
it.
Oh,
There is. Like
yeah.
you're just looking at, the studies that you want to pull,
Exactly. Exactly.
basically. And you talked about that a little bit in your book too, with even with COVID, and the evidence looking at vitamin D levels
Yeah.
and things like that. I mean, it's right there.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, I love this conversation. So um so in your book, uh, let's talk about that a little bit. So you write that doctors don't necessarily, know how to create health. So they're trained to diagnose and manage disease. That is true. You get out into, as soon as you step into your residency, it's make the diagnosis and here's the drug to put on it. Um, what do you wish every patient understood before walking into an appointment with a physician?
Yeah. Well, I think it's exactly that you see that person as just another human being that took a particular mode of study, say conventional medical school, but they got one view of the body and were taught one set of tools. So you're a unique individual. There's no such thing as the average person with a standard set of symptoms that they've been taught. And then on top of even the individual doctor who might be kind of figuring out, and okay, I think there's something different going on there. So many doctors are actually governed by a whole set of protocols imposed on them by their health system or their hospital or whatever.
And insurance
And
companies and
absolutely. And so
yeah,
you've got a certain set of symptoms and you're going to get a standard intervention.
yep,
And the standard of care, gosh, I hear that thrown at me all the time. The standard of care needs to be understood that a conventional doctor follows, and it's really just a legal construct to
yes,
protect that physician if something goes wrong, right? So
yep,
the
that's
human
true.
body is very, very complicated. Things go wrong all the time. There's a lot of underlying issues that the physician may not know about, so something may go wrong. But if they followed the standard of care, whatever the steps were that they were told for this particular group of symptoms, do this. If they followed it, they're not liable in court. Well, you followed the standard of care. But if they look at you really and put some critical thinking on what's going on with you and maybe, your particular environment and your set of circumstances and stepped outside the standard of care and then something goes wrong, as things do, well, then they're on their own. And so
Right.
I think that's really important for the patient to understand, about what that standard of care really is. It's not to protect the patient, it's to protect the physician.
Yeah, and I mean, as we're talking about this, I get so heated myself, like when I'm talking about this, because it's like our entire system is busted in many different ways. And even looking at legislation that comes and goes around different things, it's not really hitting like where it needs to like be disrupted. And I almost feel like in a lot of ways, like our entire system needs to be
Yeah,
systematically dismantled, but it's truly difficult to do that when you have these power players in play.
yeah,
You've got big pharma, you got big food, you've got insurance companies. So it really does, I think, I think really what you're saying too is really empowering people to take front and center, responsibility for their health and not just, take it as a system that you have to, suffer through or be at the whim of.
yeah.
And I'm curious about if you have other thoughts about that, but also if you've seen any challenges navigating healthcare as a woman in particular, and if there are any suggestions around that, if you have had that
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. Well, I mean, women's bodies are really complicated, right? So, yeah. And so when I'm
Much
talking
more
about,
than men, I'll say
yeah,
that.
yeah, but sometimes I get frustrated. There's wonder women out there and they're focused on their care is for women's care. And I'm like, what about need this kind of approach. So it kind of goes both ways. But, for women in particular, we have all this amazingly, beautifully designed system that enables us to grow a whole human. And that's really completely amazing. And all our systems are so intricate to enable that to happen, and to be able to sustain this human for 9 months. It's really incredible if you think about it. But then at the same time, the conceit that modern medicine can fix a system or two with a man-made chemical is really ridiculous. So I think women, I think women of a certain age, right? So once you get into your 40s and 50s, your body's starting to change. It's perfectly natural, but it requires a lot of nourishment and nutrients and support for that change to go well. If you think of the butterfly and the chrysalis and what it's going to go through, the caterpillar to then become that butterfly, that's kind of what's going on in your body. And your body needs a lot of extra nutrients and a lot of extra care for that to happen. So then when you're not getting all of that, and maybe you're eating all that bad food that has served you perfectly well in your 30s, and you're getting through all of that, well, now you're starting to get some sort of innocent sort of symptoms. Maybe you're getting chronic migraines, maybe you're getting weight gain that you can't get rid of, maybe irritability, depression, all these different things that women of a certain age go through, right? Well, your typical doctor's gonna prescribe a pill. Perhaps it helps a little, perhaps not. I actually list in my book different categories of drugs and their efficacy rates for people in general. And again, I'm a data geek too, so looking at all of the data, and all of them are 50% or lower. Some categories of drugs, it's like 30% effective, which really means that most drugs don't work for most people. That's really what that
and
means.
not counting the side effects and
Right.
all the nutrients that they deplete just by taking them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you could assume that you're the outlier, and your doctor's like, oh, well, we'll just try this other one, and you'll cycle through a few different drugs, right? But then, finally you land on one, and you keep that. But then you've got some new symptoms, which are probably side effects, like you said. And so now he's like, well, no, now you need this other pill. And so it goes. And at no point does anybody take stock to look at what is the cause of the original symptom itself, which with women, it for the most part, it's nutrient deficiencies and a lot of toxins too, and all the products that women put on their skin. Don't get me started with that. But then suddenly you're age 60, right? And you're on 5 different medications, and you tell yourself, oh, well, I'm just getting old. But for the most part, so many of those symptoms are created by the medication itself.
Yep. And then one thing you haven't talked about yet, I want to bring it to the forefront because you do mention it in your book too, is, making sure we don't underestimate the power of stress relief. And even with all the interventions, I say, even with root cause medicine,
Yeah.
You can get those labs looking not normal but optimal,
Yes.
and you can have the nutrients going in and the quality supplements.
Yeah.
And there is a subset of people who, despite that, still don't quote quote feel
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
And I always say in that case, the root of the root of the root
Yeah.
is even deeper than that. And
Yeah.
it's really about our nervous system, and
Yeah.
we can add spirituality in there,
Absolutely. Yeah.
energetic,
Yeah. Yeah.
components that really
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
the root cause,
Yeah.
really, when
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
look at
Absolutely.
it. But what
Absolutely.
would you say about that?
Yeah.
I definitely feel like that's one of the missing pieces. It's almost like
Yeah.
the key to the castle, but
Yeah.
and you speak about that in your book. So
Yeah, because I have a lot of
elaborate that.
I have a lot
Yeah.
of personal experience in this. I had a super stressful job. I was an executive. I was traveling a lot. I had 2 kids. I was a
Yeah.
single parent for a long time with
Uh-huh.
an ex, and I went through a lot of stress, and even today, your mindset is absolutely critical into how your body's going to heal. And so, if anybody asks you, I say, I'm not stressed. I've got, I can work from home, and I can juggle things. I don't have any financial issues, and I would say that, but deep down, my mindset was just messed up. The messages that we tell ourselves, the things that we say to ourselves, we don't say them out loud. That really affects what's going on in your body, and I think people don't really
Yep.
realize that. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's absolutely critical to address your mindset, and however you do that, that could be a myriad of different reasons, but different ways. But we need humans for a start. I mean, I think that's the
The
whole lockdown
connection.
situation
Yeah.
is so ridiculous. And oh, but we're on screens screens and we can have coffees with our friends on screens. There is something biological going on when you're in the room with somebody that you
Yes.
just don't get on a screen.
Yes,
And,
and
and
especially for women. I mean,
that's
we show
absolutely,
oxytocin, all of those hormones get
absolutely.
released. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I think that's absolutely critical. So yeah, I've seen it myself and I talk about it in my own life. I had chronic eczema for like 10 years that I couldn't get rid of. And, and I don't know what it was. I mean, to this day, it's disappeared and I can't put my finger on one thing. But, I think mindset was really a huge part of that. And so, yeah, if it's finding friends, if it's getting into a church that, maybe you don't do anything like that, maybe it's the messaging that you're telling yourself, maybe you need something like meditation or tapping, or there's a lot of different things that I talk about in the book as well. But yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because
Yeah, and getting out in
eating all the right
nature.
things, and if your mind's not with it,
Yeah.
you're gonna get well.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, even just taking a walk and getting out into
Yeah,
nature, it's like it does so many different things.
yeah,
You're getting the vitamin D conversion, you're getting the stress relief, you're getting grounding, you're getting color therapy. There's like so much happening.
yeah,
So, yeah, I'm glad that you talk about that. And then I want to I want to talk a little bit about, the fact that you have worked with employers and brokers and health plans. You're inside these boardrooms. You're working with them to talk about their benefits and things. What, from your experience, I guess, to employees, to brokers, even, what are some of your, I guess, suggestions about even I guess from two standpoints, like how to help employers understand the value of this type of care and looking at medicine in this way, but
yeah.
also from the employee standpoint, like what are some recommendations to them about helping them to understand about their benefits or, things that they might overestimate or underestimate in their health plan? Like, take us there, like,
Yeah.
kind of inside the institution, I'll say.
Yeah, yeah. So I think employers don't realize the huge influence they have on health in this country, frankly. So
Mm,
many people, they get their healthcare from their employer. And if their employer
right.
is spending all of their money on a conventional health plan, the message is if you've got an ailment, you're going to go to a conventional doctor and get a pill. That's
Yeah.
what people are doing because that's what their employer is helping them do, right? But employers, they don't understand what we're talking about today. They really don't. Not
They need to
not
get your book
now. Yeah. Oh,
and
absolutely.
pass them around.
Absolutely. So they're caught up in the same system of
Yeah.
conventional healthcare thinking that they've got sick employees and they absolutely want to help their sick employees. And so they think they've got to cover the conventional doctor fees and all the pills. And they have wellness programs. I've worked with some of the biggest, most strategic employers that have wonderful wellness programs. But the wellness program is separate and it's communicated separate. Like if you're
Hmm.
really sick, you go with the conventional
Mm.
plan. But here's some other programs that you can have, in terms of a wellness solution. So, a lot of top employers are investing in solutions like Ciba Health, which I think is absolutely fantastic. But the problem that I see is the way it's communicated, and it's
Mm.
communicated as an alternative. So it's a wellness
Mm.
program for the few who are maybe open to some sort of alternative or maybe aren't that sick, right? But then the vast
Got it.
majority of the employer's budget and
I was
and
going
their
to ask you about
compensation.
that with the
Yeah,
cost.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Their cost, and they're going to hire a benefit manager, a healthcare manager that's looking after the health plan, and maybe they're supposed to look after the wellness program on the side, but that's just a wellness program, and their attention, 95% of their time is on this conventional plan and what drugs are we covering. The biggest conversation this fall when we're getting ready for open enrollment was, are we going to cover Ozempic and who are we covering?
Yep. Yep.
I'm
I
like,
bet.
guys, that's the wrong, conversation.
Mm.
And frankly, they think that's what employees want. And they're trying to attract employees, the top talent. They're trying to retain the employees they've got. They think that's what employees want, right? And they think if they don't cover the drugs, then they'll lose that employee to a company that does,
Mhm.
or they won't be able to, attract any new people. But I think people don't really understand. I think the employees themselves I think you've got to start there. I think you've got to start with the education, because
Yeah.
I think, what do they underestimate? I think they underestimate, the health plan is doing bad, and what, the alternatives, are going to be much better for them. So I think employees think if they join a company and they've got a really rich, conventional health plan, and it's covering 90% of my doctor's fees and 90% of my drugs, oh, isn't that really good? And they just don't realize that it's, if it doesn't cover root cause medicine, and it doesn't cover the really high quality medical grade supplements, then it's really not doing anything for their health at all. And so I think employees don't realize that. And I think employees also don't realize how much their employer is spending on conventional health care, because they don't see a lot of it, right? Because the employer is paying for it. But the costs are absolutely astronomical, and they're going up year on year. And
Yep.
you're getting sicker and sicker. So, but then the employer, that's not sustainable. So the employer is going to be putting that cost on you eventually. And so you think you're saving for a comfortable retirement, but you're going to wind up spending all of that on medical care. So I think the employer needs to educate their employees, and I think they need to have much more consistent policies. So instead of saying, "Hey, I'm going to pay for your Ozempic," but then I've got this wellness program over here that's going to help with your metabolic issues or whatever. That's like talking out of both sides of their mouths, right? So I think there's got to be consistent policies, and I think there's got to be really good education for the employees why this is first level care. This isn't the
Yeah.
alternative. This is where you should start.
Yeah, that's really important. And again, it brings up that disjointed kind of approach to health because I feel like to some employees, like with that traditional benefits package, it's almost reactive, like you're
Yeah,
prepping for an
yeah,
emergency or a surgery or something like that. And you're right. I think even the employees and even the employers need to understand the value of the true prevention and true root cause and how that could, potentially save money because honestly, again, when it comes down to it, a lot of it is around cost and cost for the plan and cost for the employers and it's a shame that, money is the big issue when we're looking at like the health of, of an individual.
yeah,
So, and it sounds like definitely, integrating, bringing a lot of those tools together and not making, I love that what you said about not having a wellness program be separate, but have
right.
that be the focus.
Yes,
And then the thing is, you prove it out. So you have participants who get onto root cause or prevention, and then you can actually, like research and you can use the data to see if
yeah,
if there are savings there for
yeah,
sure.
absolutely.
And I will say a lot of employers are, when it comes to the GLP-1s, they
Yeah,
are they are getting the connection that it does take, if you want to get someone off of it and not on it for the long term, you do need to get to that root cause or have it in tandem,
yeah.
to for the cost wise. But
Yeah, and many employers are saying if you want Ozempic, you've got to start with a Ciba Health and do some sort of
mhm.
intervention first, and that's a great step in the right direction. That's great. But then there's still, you can get around that, because if you've got the mindset, well, I've got to try Ciba for a month, and then I get my Ozempic. Again, it's the wrong mindset.
Got it. Got it. Now, let's say, for an individual who, and we've been talking about this root cause approach and its efficacy, and we know that for a lot of people who want to do root cause medicine or they're finding a practitioner on their own, it can be pricey. Insurance doesn't pay for a lot of that care. Insurance doesn't pay for a lot of the medical grade supplements. But for someone who is, seeking this approach and they know that it's something that they want to explore or that could help them, but they can't afford it,
Yeah.
what would you say is the most realistic starting point for someone like that?
Yeah, and it is expensive just to go and make an appointment at a functional medicine clinic by yourself, and because it's probably not covered, as you said. But that's why I love Ciba so much,
I know.
and there's other companies too. But you can sign up for a program. I don't know how you're doing it, frankly, with the cost, but you can sign up. It's incredibly cost effective for a company like that, and it will get you off the drugs. I mean, that's what's so crazy from the employer standpoint. You were talking about the costs, and they're all about the money. Well, for employers, if you took this approach as this is the first line of care, it's going to save you money in the long run, the employer as well.
Yep.
But for the employee, I would say you can't afford not to do it, because it's going to get you well, and it's going to get you off the drugs, and so you're not spending your retirement savings when you're older on all the medications. So I get it. Some people can't even afford the monthly amount, to start with. So I do talk in my book that there's plenty of things you can start with yourself. There's a lot you can do. So where to start obviously depends on you and your situation. And then I'd always say, what you enjoy, what you're comfortable with. So that's why I give a lot of different modalities to, your culturally, where you come from and what you like, do you want to spend time cooking? If you do enjoy cooking, and even if you don't, maybe you want to learn to cook, that would be a really great place to start.
Ooh, this is
So
wonderful. I can't wait to
yes.
get more into your book. I've read a part of
Oh
it.
yeah,
Keep
yeah. No,
going,
I
keep
talk about this.
going.
I'm a big foodie.
This is
I'm a
Oh,
huge
me
foodie,
too. Me
and
too.
so yeah. I mean, for me, anybody that I start talking about, and they're like, I can't afford functional medicine, I say start fix your food. I mean, for me, that
Hmm.
is the number one, and I think the
Hmm.
easiest place. It sounds hard, and I'm not saying you have to learn to be a gourmet cook from the get go, but fixing your food,
Yes.
reading ingredients, reading what's on the side of those packets. Get away from the packets altogether, I would say.
Yes.
Start buying single ingredient foods, and learn a few recipes. Even I
Yes.
wasn't going to do this because I'm not, not wanting to write a cookbook or anything, but I do have a few recipes in an appendix just to get
Awesome.
people started, because you only need a
Awesome.
handful of recipes every week,
Yep. And it can
just
be
to get
very
you started.
simple.
Super, super
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah.
So I talk about, just start, and again, you can get overwhelmed. Oh my gosh, I've got to change everything I eat. I say just start with breakfast. Okay, that really is the most important meal of the day. So, just get rid of the cereal and the bagels and the Starbucks sausage sandwiches. Please, find some organic pasture raised eggs, some avocados, some, organically grown greens, and that would be great. And, if you don't have time to cook, then make a smoothie the night before if you're
Hmm.
in the morning. But please, if you're making a smoothie, not like just full of fruit, put plenty of protein in it. Just
Hmm. Handful of
almond
greens.
butter, absolutely get those greens in there. So I think start fixing your food, because once you fix your food, and even as I say, just start with breakfast and then maybe some healthier snacks. Avoid the candy bars, take some nuts to work. I think you're going to start to feel better. And I think, after a couple of weeks of that, you're going to start to be like, oh, okay, that did something. I feel better. Maybe I'll grab something else. Maybe the next one is moving, or maybe start looking at some other kinds of toxins I might be putting into my body. So yeah, I would say start with fixing the food, because it's the easiest and cheapest place to start.
It is. And I like, if people were to look at what I eat, it's very simple. It's maybe, 2 to 3 ingredients. There's a piece of protein and some broccoli on the side or something like that. And like you said, if one of the things I think that people can do is just removing, I don't know how many people within a couple days of just removing gluten and wheat,
Oh, please. Yeah.
notice a big difference. And then, going back to the cost too. One thing I just have to add this because I feel like health, like your health is wealth. You can't you can't do anything if if you're tired and sluggish and you can't play with your kids, you can't play with your grandkids.
Yeah.
And I think about a lot of people who say they can't afford things.
Yeah.
And that may be true because there's some people on fixed incomes, but in general, I notice people will pay for what is a priority for them.
Exactly.
So, maybe that supplement wasn't a priority, but then going out to get the hair and nails done was.
Exactly.
So,
Absolutely.
we have to reframe and
Yes.
really make health one of those priority points as well.
Yeah.
So, I love this conversation. I'm so glad that we've had you on here. I'm glad that I started digging into your book. I'm wondering, are there anything that we missed that you really want the listeners to hear? Any last, pointers? What would you leave the listeners with?
Um, okay, well, I'm going to give you my top five if that's okay.
Yes,
So
love it.
we've talked about nourishment. So yeah, absolutely, nourishment is key. Moving your body every day is probably going to be number two. But number three, toxic exposures. We haven't talked too much about that, and I think that's really important. Just not just in the food, but what you're putting on your body. You mentioned
Yes.
you want to go pay to get your nails done. The
Yep.
chemicals that's in that and the chemicals
I
that they're
know.
putting on you in
Yeah.
those places, you want
Yep.
to be dead in those places. All the different toxic exposures, and that can get kind of overwhelming. But even electronics and EMS, people
Yep.
don't realize
Yep.
their
That's a
cell phones, keeping their cell phones on the
yep.
body, and how damaging that is to the body.
Yep.
Let alone being close to one of those 5G towers. Don't get me started with all of that.
Oh, that could
So
be a
that's
whole other discussion. Maybe we'll bring you back to chat about
yeah, so
that.
that would be three. I mean, number four is always going to be get off the pharmaceuticals if you're on them already today, and you might need help. So different ones, in terms of whether you need a professional to help you wean off things. So don't just stop taking something that somebody's given you, but that should be your focus, is how to get off them, and certainly don't start any new ones. Even if you're sick, and even if you've got a bacterial infection, you don't need those antibiotics in 9 times out of 10. So just
Yeah.
push back. So really stay away, and even the over the counter, some of them are some of the worst. So stay away from any of the pharmaceuticals. And then we haven't talked too much about sleep. So I think sleep will
Mm.
be my in my top five.
Mm.
So how amazing sleep is. You're not just kind of unconscious for a bit, but what is going on in your body when you sleep, that rest and repair. So I think we talked about mindset, people kind of forget a little bit. You've also got to really work on your sleep. And even after
Mm.
fixing
Mm.
your food, I might say if you're not getting 7 to 8 hours really restful sleep, that's a problem. You need to work on it. And you might say, oh, well, that's part of my health issue. And absolutely, but it's a symptom. It's not something that you just kind of accept and say, well, I don't sleep well, or and that's what I should do. And if you're working for an employer that doesn't value sleep and thinks you need to be checking email at 10 o'clock at night, you need to rethink who your employer is. But yeah,
Mm.
sleep, super important.
This is good. Those are really, really, really good. Um, so good. And I think definitely for people who want to dive in deeper, they can definitely check out your book. So, where can people find your book and learn from your work, or even companies who want to bring your thinking into their company?
Yeah. Well, so my book is everywhere. Good books are sold. So Amazon, all the usual places. I warn against the Audible version though. I've heard they've used an American AI voice, which is a little cringy. And I do have diagrams and illustrations. I like to keep it fun, but I sometimes refer to those. So I kind of warn against that. And then my website is just emmatekstra.com, Tekstra with a K. And so that's kind of my home base, and so you can get to all different places from there. And I have a blog that's free, so I'm writing bi-weekly, so you can find that on my website, but also on LinkedIn. So employers, find me on LinkedIn. I've got a newsletter that you can sign up for there, and just contact me through my website if you want to talk about how we can help your employees.
This is perfect. And we'll definitely link the your websites, and we'll have some show notes as well with the episode. And thank you so much for being here. The conversation was wonderful. I am sure it was enlightening for all of our listeners, and I can't wait to continue digging into your book. Like, I was immediately drawn in. So I really do believe it should be required, reading for someone navigating the journey, and for corporations as well. So thank you so much for being here. And thank you to all of our listeners for joining in. And until next time, be well.